Hey folks, Nick Jennison for Thinking About Guitar, and today we're taking a look at not one, but two new guitars from our friends at Spira. This is the T420, and this guitar over my shoulder in this fabulous chameleon flip-flop paint is the S420. And both these guitars represent a brand new direction for Spira in that they both sport double locking tremolo systems. More on that in a second. But first, a word on Spira and who they are. Spira make exceptionally high spec, but also exceptionally affordable modern guitars for the modern player playing aggressive music. Now, I think you can tell by looking that these guitars will be perfectly at home if you're a metal player, but they also do really well if you're playing shred, if you're a fusion player, and even playing funk, which we'll explore in just a second. Now, the main differences between these two guitars are going to be the body style. We have this S-style guitar over here and this T-style shape over here, which is my personal favorite. In terms of spec, they're very similar, and it's really down to the aesthetics and the ergonomics as to which one of these you're going to prefer. There are some slight differences in terms of how the guitar sits in your lap, how it hangs on a strap, whether or not it has a forearm contour, but both guitars share a Canadian rock maple neck, which is roasted, more on that in a second, poplar bodies, sung-ill tremolo systems, and my personal favorite feature, the villain humbuckers that have been custom voiced and custom wound for Spira guitars. I think they're absolutely killer. We'll talk more about that nerdy stuff when we take a closer look at the spec in just a second, but before we do, let's take a listen to some more tones from these guitars, but this time played outside of a mix. So now we've heard a selection of tones from these guitars, let's talk more about the specifications in detail, and we're going to begin with a closer look at the headstock. Now, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think one of my favorite features about Spira guitars is the headstock shape. It's really hard to get a new headstock right, apparently, and we've seen so many guitars that look great right up until the first fret, and then the headstock, it's a bit of a mess. But in Spira's case, I think they've absolutely nailed it with this aggressive-looking reverse headstock with this slight bill up here. Again, matching finish on the body, which is very cool. We've got the chameleon finish on the S420, which is gorgeous. I'll show you some close-ups of that so you can see how it looks, but we'll flip it over and show you the back. This is another really great feature. So once again, we have roasted maple on all of the Spira guitars, all across the range, and the 420s are no different. It's a very slim, comfortable, modern D-shaped neck. It's going to be super stable in terms of tuning stability and also in terms of neck relief as you move between different climates. Let's say, for example, you live in a cold place, you go into a warm studio, or maybe you're a traveling musician and the guitar is going in and out of aircrafts. This is going to stay super stable. Again, roasted maple is becoming more common on more affordable guitars, but it's always a nice inclusion. And the finish, this satin finish, is super tactile, really playable, and very, very fast as well, which is nice. Of course, you know, you're going to play these guitars quickly. Of course you are. Now, let's take a quick look at this little addition up here. This is the Spira Guitars string dampener, and this is something that comes standard on every Spira guitar. It's a Velcro dampener that you place under the strings on the headstock end, and what this does is it dampens the sympathetic vibrations that you get when you dig in with a heavy pick. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but if you're tracking metal rhythm parts, this can make the difference between your parts sounding tight and sounding a little bit weird. If you've ever tried recording metal guitar, you'll be familiar with those weird tinkling noises that you sometimes get from the strings up at this end of the guitar. Now, I will say with this guitar sporting a locking nut, that is going to minimize how prominent these string vibrations are, but it's still nice that Spira have included this. And of course, you can always whip it off and put it on your other guitars too if you're tracking heavy parts on a different instrument. So a very nice touch there. Now let's talk about the fretboard very quickly. The fretboard is what Spira are calling Ebony Tech, and while I'm not 100% sure what Ebony Tech means, I'm guessing it's some kind of ebony substitute, what I will say is that it looks like ebony and certainly feels a lot like ebony. And while I'm not going to wax about how much ebony may or may not influence the guitar's plugged in tone, especially when we're dealing with high gain amplifier sounds, of course I have my own opinions, I'm sure you do too, what I will say is that ebony as a wood for fretboards, while it looks great, is prone to shrinkage, and that can cause fret sprout, which is really annoying. That's the sharp edges that you get that weren't there yesterday. Now, if Ebony Tech is a little less prone to fret sprout, for me, that makes it a good choice. Now, I do want to talk about the inlays, and this is a little thing, but it does make me happy. Now, we talked about this in our review of the S507 7-string, but what we have here is dot inlays that are on the side of the bass strings in the low octave, and then up here in the high octave, they're on the side of the treble strings. Now, this might not seem like a big deal. It's definitely a cool visual touch, but what it does mean is that when you're playing down here and you're riffing away in the low octave, the fret markers are right under your fingers, and then when we get up to the top and we're soloing on the treble strings, the fret markers are right under your fingers. It's nice. It just kind of helps with visualization. It's a little touch, but it does make me happy. Now, let's turn our attention to the bodies of these guitars, and this is where they're going to differ from each other, because the neck shape, the neck woods, the fret height, the fretboard wood, all that stuff is exactly the same on both instruments, but the body shapes are different. And we're going to begin with this T-style instrument that's sat on my lap, which is my personal favorite of the two. I love the way it looks. It is that classic T-style single cut silhouette, but it has this slight offset shape that just makes it a little more aggressive looking, along with this Florentine cutaway, which is that sharp cutaway down here. It goes all the way up to the 24th fret. I'm going to show you the neck join actually very quickly, which gives you excellent upper fret access. We also have this recessed back plate, which gives you access to the trem screws without having to take the back plate off, which is a really nice touch if you want to adjust them. But I will grab the S420 very quickly as well. Now, the S420, as we mentioned, is available in this gorgeous flip-flop paint. And I'll get some close-ups and show you how that looks. Spira are calling it chameleon. It's noticeably smaller on the lap, which, if you're a smaller bodied player, is going to be a big thing. For me, I'm a larger guy. I tend to lean more towards that larger, heavier T-style shape. But again, this is a preference thing, and I think this guitar looks really great with this classic Super Strat outline. We all know what kind of guitars this is drawing on, and I think it's a great example of that archetype. But another difference is this guitar features comfort cuts, which again, I'll show you in the back, which the T-style guitar doesn't. We've got this belly cut over here, a forearm cut over at this end. Now, again, whether you like those is your own personal preference. I think it's really just a question of which guitar feels better in your hands. The tones are going to be very similar. Now, to that end, we can talk about the Spira Villain humbuckers. Now, this is one of my favorite things about these guitars because, let's be honest, on affordable instruments like these, the first thing to go is the pickups. We rip them out, we put our favorite set in. It adds to the cost, it adds to the inconvenience. You're not going to need to do that with these guitars because these pickups have been perfectly wound and much time's been taken over these. They've been perfectly wound for modern aggressive playing, and they give us the cardinal tones that we need, certainly in the metal space. We have a bridge pickup that is tight and aggressive and forward. It doesn't have too much low end bloat. It doesn't extend too far into the treble frequencies. It screams when you dig in for leads. It barks when you dig in for riffs. The neck pickup, by contrast, is a little lower output. It's smoother, it's fluty, it's great for lead lines. In the middle position, despite the fact there are no coil splits, gives us this beautiful clean sparkle that's actually appropriate for a lot of styles outside of the metal and shred domain. Now, one thing I will say is these pickups are 4-conductor wiring, but there are no coil splits wired in anywhere on these guitars, which I think is a bit of an oversight, although personally, I haven't felt myself missing them. That said, it'd be trivially easy to replace the tone pot with a push-pull or to put a 5-way blade in for some more tonal versatility. And I feel like that's something I would like to see from factory, but again, I didn't actually really miss it when I was playing this guitar, so maybe I'm wrong here, who knows? And it would be very easy to modify these guitars to take advantage of that. Now, I've measured these pickups as just over 12K on both guitars and just over 8K in the neck on both guitars. Now, Spira lists these pickups as 12K ceramic pickups. That's just the spec for the bridge pickup. And I was a little concerned there because I thought the neck pickup might be too hot or too aggressive to really balance with the bridge pickup. That's not the case here. And they balance really beautifully, as I'm sure you heard in those sound examples before. We'll do some more forensic examples in a second. Another thing, though, that I want to draw your attention to is the Sung Il tremolo system. Now, this is a Korean-made double locking tremolo bridge. And while it's not a Floyd Rose, it certainly looks like one and performs like one. And let's be honest, the Koreans know a thing or two about quality manufacturing. Now, if we screw the collar down tight, we can get this bar to stay put, which means you can flick the end of it and do those Brad Gillis gargles. My preference is to have it loose so the bar gets out of the way when I'm not using it. I'm kind of more of an intermittent bar user than someone that lives on the bar, but you can have it in either position. It's going to stay put just fine. And in terms of sensitivity, it's not super sensitive, which is probably a good thing on this kind of guitar, because if you're digging in on heavy riffs and the trem is crazy sensitive, the whole guitar can gargle, which is quite annoying. But you can still get those gargles. You can get lots of lovely dips and dives. There's plenty of range in both directions. It's a recessed design and excellent return to pitch. There's also plenty of range on the fine tuners, which is something we look for in a guitar like this, because that's where the majority of your tuning adjustments are going to be made. Now, what I can't speak to is the longevity of this trem, and I know that's a concern for a lot of folks with knife edges, but what I will say is that the performance out of the box hints at a quality piece of manufacturing, so we can expect this trem to go the distance. Next up, let's do a direct back-to-back sound comparison with these guitars. We're going to do a tour of all the pickup positions that are available. There are only 3. It's bridge pickup, both pickups, and neck pickup. We'll explore the taper of the volume and tone controls too, and we'll do it with both guitars with the same sound back to back so that you can hear the differences or similarities between the two. We've matched the pickup heights. They've both got a fresh set of 10s on. Let's take a listen. there you go, folks. That's been a look at the Spira S420 and T420. I've got to tell you, as a value proposition, these guitars are absolutely outrageous. You can buy both of these guitars for the price that you'd expect to pay for a single instrument of similar spec from many other manufacturers. It boggles the mind how much guitar you're getting for your money here. And it's not just the fact that it's good for the money. These are just flat out good guitars. I'd be quite happy to take either of these on tour with me, certainly with Blitzkrieg, if I'm playing heavy music. Maybe I wouldn't take it on my blues gig, but that's not really what these guitars are for. But even still, really, really exceptional guitars, especially for the money. Once again, this is the T420, this is the S420. My name's Nick Jennison, thinking about guitar. I'll see you next time.